Now, bear with me here. This sounds a little woo-woo, but the concept is that curriculum is an autobiographical experience. So under the example section, the author writes, quote, "Students write autobiographical accounts that focus on striving to know who, how, and why they have developed as they have. Teachers and/or other students respond through written or oral comment on the writing. Dialogue ensues and creates reconceived visions of self, others, and the world. Relevant literature is introduced, and the curriculum becomes the process of reconceptualization. The purpose of reconceptualization is individual emancipation from the constraints of unwarranted convention, ideology, and psychological unidimensionality. It is to explore other provinces of meaning, to envision possibilities, and to fashion new directions for oneself, others, and the world through mutual reconceptualization." End quote. Okay, I know that sounds weird, but if you think of curriculum in connection with the previous episode that discussed rhizomatic learning, which again is linked to in the show notes, these two approaches, when combined together with like different forms of assessment, like ipsative assessment, which is a reflection on your learning, if you consider this in relation to what was just discussed for currere, one of the things that I would do in the classroom is, one, have a rhizomatic approach where kids could go in any direction they wanted, spend any length of time on any concept or practice that was of interest to them, and choose when they were done with a project and move on to a different language, platform, etc., or project. However, as part of an ipsative, summative reflection at the end, I would ask students when they would turn in a project, what's something that you learned? How does this compare to what you learned previously? And how does this compare to where you want to go next? What do you want to learn next? This approach was heavily informed by these writings on currere, this autobiographical narrative of basically how you have developed over time in relation to learning in a specific content area, and then trying to set goals for where do you want to go next. Although this really resonated with me, and it was an approach that I tried to combine with like the curriculum as experience and curriculum as agenda for social reconstruction, it does have some criticisms. So the criticism is that like there's so much more to unpack there. Like you could honestly use professional therapists, I don't know, maybe even a historian. While this really resonates for me, this approach definitely has some criticisms. And one of the criticisms is that this is really difficult to do, especially if you're working with a bunch of kids. Again, I had a few hundred that I work with, and previously I taught over 1,000 when I was working in multiple schools and traveling between them. So to be able to sit down and really get to know and understand the history, the psychology of each student, it's so hard to do from an educator standpoint. But if you can approach this in a way that students are taking control of this exploration and narrative, I think it's a lot easier to do. This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast is from episode number 125 and is titled Images of Curriculum.